Welcome back, everybody, and I'm becoming violently aware I look weird on camera. I think this is screw with me because it's flipped, and I'm seeing my face flipped or something, or maybe it's the mirror effect. I have no clue. Anyways, we're going to jump right into this because we've got an old favorite here. Alright, so starting with the first one of dumb medical tweets, this guy has just a story arc here that starts good, around right in the middle, you're like, oh, he's going to make it, and then he fails. So, is it possible with this thing that it interferes with protein transcription process and prevents us from reincarnating when we decompose after we die? God would not be able to recognize the sequence, and we would not be able to enter heaven. And it's def possible. It's def not. Anyways, so this guy was actually already in a previous episode, but then you get the story arc going here where he got something, and then it's like, my friends and followers, my experience with the CVID has forced me to change my opinion. It's like, we're getting there. I have been saying CVID doesn't exist for 2 years. I would like to come forward that I have it, and I'm being treated by doctors who are trained in terrain theory. You almost made it, man. You're right there. It's like the cusp of achieving knowledge and crashes. So, obviously, I wish him the best. I hope for a speedy recovery. Nobody should have to suffer with it. It doesn't matter what your belief is. You shouldn't have to suffer with any type of disease, which is why I believe, technically speaking, we should probably just eradicate all viruses because they really don't serve much of a purpose. Now, there is the concept of, oh, well, we can use them to implant CRISPR to change genetic sequences in the body, which CRISPR, yeah, absolutely. That would be pretty awesome, I think. But I feel like we could design a virus to do that for us. We don't need to use something natural. We can design it. Of course, bit of a conspiracy theory. You ever notice how, like, geometrically perfect viruses are? Always wondered why. Moving on to tweet number 2. You can place a seed into your mouth briefly before planting, and the seed will grow with your DNA and will help heal you. What if your DNA has been changed by the V? So, I don't know what's going on with this. I've actually seen this before where somebody's like, oh, if you put some of your DNA on a seed and it grows, it'll somehow intertwine with the plant DNA. This is the same concept as like telogeny, except you're doing it with seeds. Do people understand that any type of cellular DNA or your cells in general will break down, if not inside of your body? Like if you have some epithelial tissue, right? And it gets on the seed and then you plant the seed, well, that doesn't mean much because the tissue is still gonna like completely degrade along with the genetic material in it. It's just gonna die because we're multicellular organisms. Our single cells can't exist without the rest of us in a system, unless it's cancer, because cancer can do that. But no, placing a seed on your tongue will not help heal you. Unless they're saying, no, the seed itself will grow. So the plant DNA isn't helping you, your DNA is somehow helping the plant. If it's been changed by the V, then doesn't matter. Also, now that I've said that, this is definitely going to get another strike on my channel. Well, too late now. Moving on to the third one. Men are born with different genital... This guy was so close to like actually saying something scientifically correct, but he got a little confused. Men are born with different genitals than women. Were you aware of this little known fact? Men are born with an XX chromosome. Women are born with an XY. Were you aware of that? Men are not born with a uterus. Maybe you should get a refund from your medical school. Just a thought. Bro, men are born with XY. Women are born with XX. Also, shout out to that one commenter. Yeah, commenter. Klinefelter syndrome, not Turner syndrome. Remember that from the last episode. Moving on to tweet 4. To my guys out there, how would you feel if a woman gave you flowers? I wouldn't be offended, although as a man, I don't have the same smell and color spectrum as women do, so for me, it'd be the thought that counts. Now, it's possible this guy has an extreme case of colorblindness. It's entirely possible. Men are more prone to colorblindness than women are. And women actually do see a lot more colors than men see. And I believe, I don't know about their sense of smell. I haven't heard anything about that, but I really wouldn't doubt it. But as men, we still see a ton of colors. We can still smell stuff that smells good. The olfactory bulb is still working quite well. I just don't understand what this guy is going for here. Like, who's the thought that counts? Bro, you're not like walking around seeing the world in black and white. You're not like, and even dogs actually can see in color. I was gonna say you're not a dog, but you know, dogs can see in color, so it really doesn't matter. They just see in different wavelengths than we do. So I think it's more than just the thought that counts. I'm just gonna throw that out there. And I know this one wasn't even really that scientific. This was just kind of a dumb thing that was just like, what? All right. ADHD and ADD is usually undiagnosed sleep apnea. Okay, I'm trying to understand what they're saying here. Hyperactivity and attention deficit is usually undiagnosed sleep apnea. There's like, you ever see that meme with that one kid who goes like from the bottom stair to like the top 4 stairs and he passes all those stairs in the middle? Now, sleep apnea does cause some issues mentally, and it can actually be a problem. In fact, I have sleep apnea. If you want to know what's real crap, I went to go get diagnosed with sleep apnea. I had to wear this super uncomfortable thing that they could test how many times I was holding my breath a night. Get the results back. They're like, yeah, so sleep apnea is 40 times a night holding your breath. And I was like, okay. And they're like, you held your breath 39 times. I was like, okay. So I have sleep apnea. Well, technically, you don't fall in the range. It was like, wow, okay. I'm glad I paid you for this. 39 times, much different from 40. So maybe that's why I don't have ADHD and ADD, apparently, because I just didn't hold my breath enough. But there is something to be said about sleep apnea will affect you mentally, but I don't believe that there is a actual connection between ADHD, ADD, and sleep apnea. Just throwing that out there. Hangovers are caused by... This was actually... we'll see. Hangovers are caused by impurities in the alcohol. A certain amount has to be left in it to give you a hangover, courtesy of the federal government. If you never got hungover, you'd be an alcoholic quick. No. Now, there's a couple of different things with alcohol. And this is somebody who is, I've imbibed from time to time. So the first thing with alcohol is the more expensive and pure an alcohol is, like the actual alcohol, I've noticed personally, from my layman's perspective, that the hangovers are less. And I believe it has more to do with the sugars in the alcohol. So if you take something like whiskey, right, and you're drinking whiskey, there's a lot of sugar in whiskey. But if you take something like vodka, there's less sugar. Now, at my old job, we had something that was 200 ethanol. So this is what this person is actually talking about. You actually have to have a government, basically certificate or grant's money. Basically, you have to be approved by the government to have pure alcohol. Now, you could drink 200 ethanol. It would be an incredibly unpleasant experience, I'm sure. I wouldn't drink it unless like nukes were falling, and I was like, well, why not? But as far as getting hungover, they don't like that. The government doesn't care if you get a hangover. What they care about is if you're drinking 190 or 200 ethanol, right? Because that's pure alcohol. Your body detoxing from alcohol and actually breaking down alcohol, that's what makes you hungover, technically speaking. Now, the level of hungover, I believe, may be connected to the sugars in the alcohol itself. So basically, better alcohol, less sugar. Now, but the alcohol itself and the process of detoxing from it and breaking down the actual alcohol, that is going to make you hungover. It's going to dehydrate you. It's going to get rid of electrolytes. There's some other things associated with it. If you're hungover in the nighttime when you're sleeping and you've been drunk, you're actually breathing less effectively or less efficiently, and so you can actually have a dip in your oxygen levels. Nothing dangerous. Well, depending, you never know. If you drink too much, yeah, it can be dangerous. But if it's just an average, whatever, your oxygen levels dip. So it's kind of a combination. Drinking alcohol knocks you out of homeostasis, and that's not what your body wants. So the government does not give a crap if you have a hangover or not. All right, moving on to the next. That is a good way to cultivate a healthier relationship with your body, period, body. Society has created a negative stigma surrounding periods and how our periods make us feel nasty, something that we shouldn't look forward to. Women aren't supposed to have periods, but many are not ready for that conversation. What? That's like a part of life. That's like saying people aren't supposed to have water. Like, your body does that because it's a part of the reproductive life cycle. If I recall correctly, it is the shedding of the uterine lining because it needs to essentially remain, I guess for lack of a better term, fresh, so that you can implant an egg maybe the next month. So you're supposed to. Now, the advent of birth control has changed that to a degree. Some women don't get periods, but no, they still do. Like, a lot of them still do. Like, where did this guy get this information? Like, my question is, did you pass high school sex ed? Or, to me, this kind of sounds like, is it so sheltered that they don't know? Or is it just somebody trolling? Because the more of these I do, the more I'm like, you know what I look for? I look for first name, bunch of numbers. Because that's usually a pretty good point as to I should not really give this any type of attention. But this is an actual name. So I don't know. I think this person just may have failed sex ed or just not been told that it's normal and it happens. Moving on to the next. Skin cancer didn't exist. Okay, this is correlation versus causation. Skin cancer did not exist before seed oils. Stop blaming the sun for what seed oils did. Then he gives us two examples here about how seed oils and melanoma have gone up and yada, yada, yada. So there's actually a meme out there, if I recall correctly, that it basically has the amount of Nicolas Cage movies to the inflation of our dollar or something. I can't remember what the other thing was, but they correlated perfectly with each other. Clearly they have nothing to do with one another, but this is causation, or excuse me, correlation does not equal causation. This is a perfect example of just because one thing rises and another thing rises doesn't mean those two are together. So just remember that for the future, because a lot of people like to think that correlation is open and shut, this is it, but there's other factors surrounding everything. All right, on to the next one. It should be the end-all, be-all for those who can produce. A child doesn't need anything else but the milk from the mother until weaning. Formula is literally poisoning the child. It's synthetic. A complex body will never adjust to synthetic information. So there's actually a guy I knew who said that you can't microwave your food because if you microwave your food, it changes the genetic structure of the food. Then your body can't read the information, and so your body just counts it as not food. Why? Like, what does he think this is? It's food. It's still food. Just because we create it doesn't mean it's not food. Take whey protein, for instance. That's still food. It's still organic. As far as I know, there's not anything you can eat that's entirely inorganic. I mean, we are eating microplastics all the time, but still, I'm racking my brain trying to remember if there's anything out there that's just straight inorganic. No, because we're organic. You have to have organic compounds. Just because it's created doesn't mean it doesn't work. Also, somebody tell this dude about GMOs. I mean, that's not synthetic, but it's something that we still create. Complex body will never adjust to synthetic information. Complete babble. Makes no sense. Formula is literally poisoning a child. No, it's literally not. It's literally not. In fact, it gives them nutrition in case there's an issue. Or maybe some parents just choose formula over natural milk. Who cares, dude? Moving on to the next. I was going to get a cake today to mark 2 years since the world changed. Instead, I'm at the ER with confirmed disease. The virus hit this week through my kid's daycare. I'm immune compromised and almost 6 months pregnant. You may be done with the virus. That changes nothing, which is sad. I hope she gets better very soon. If you're immune compromised, the last thing you should be eating is cake. Remember, if there's absolutely anything wrong with you. No fun, no good food. You should be at home, sitting in a bubble, hating your life. Don't have any fun, because that's how everybody wants to live their life. People like this, it's like, dude, I'm a big believer in you get what you give. And nobody's perfect, right? Nobody out there is 100% nice all the time. But this guy is just absolutely begging for something terrible to happen to him. And it's like, bro, I would not be putting that out there. But if you're immune compromised, eat a friggin' cake. Nobody cares. How is a cake? Like, if you're, okay, I'm getting riled up. Just because you're immune compromised doesn't mean you can't enjoy things. Just because you have cancer doesn't mean you can't eat a steak or go out with friends and have a beer. It just doesn't make any sense. Like, bro, who cares if people are having fun? Like, why does it matter to you? Who cares about if you're eating a cake? Really, this was just so you could like one-up them in their time of when they're like feeling down about themselves. So, bro, maybe you should re-examine your own priorities in life and stop telling people they should stop having fun just because they get sick. Throw that out there. Okay. If you could tell, I really want to say something else about him, but I try not to cuss and I try not to call names. It's what I try to do. I'm not 100% successful at it, but you know, I do try. All right, next one. Sports medicine is in a medical field. Okay, it's part of the exercise science fields. Should somebody tell them that medicine is a science? He's a sport professional. They study the human body as it relates to sport. And what we were just talking about, so why are you changing the topic to medicine? Well, it's almost like sports medicine has medicine in the name. It's almost like medical is science. It's almost like the way and the mechanics the body works and moves and the damages that are caused and how to heal from those is almost like a doctor helping you with those same things. Isn't that wild? I just can't believe it. I can't believe somebody would connect those two things. When it comes to stuff like this, I really truly believe the actual reason to do this is not in like, it's disingenuous, right? It's like, oh crap, I realize you're right. So I'm completely changing. I'm going to attack what you're talking about. But then in your effort to attack what they're talking about, instead of like actually what you were discussing, you literally prove their point. But you're using specific words as not to look stupid. But you do. Because anybody with half a brain can tell you that the exercise science fields, so sports science, medical sports science is absolutely part of the medical field. It's an important part of the medical field. We actually learn a lot from sports science because not everything comes down to micro interactions with diseases, okay? Sometimes you just pull the crap out of a muscle. Doctor will tell you rest, ice, compression, and what's the last one? Not exercise. Oh my God, I can't remember the last one. Rest, ice, compression, expansion of the muscle. I don't know. Anyways, they'll just tell you to do that. But in sports medicine, they'll have stretches you can do. They'll have techniques that'll be able to fix it. Facts, just throwing this out there. So I have this weird thing where in my shoulder, every once in a while, it'll just seize up, usually from working out or something, right? So I got a buddy who is a physical therapist, and that kind of tracks with sports medicine to a degree. And dude was able to fix it in like 30 seconds. I'd been struggling with it for a week. So I'm just saying, it's learning about the muscular, skeletal, nervous system, all those interactions and how they play out, and then fixing your body. So anyways, I hope everyone enjoyed another Dumb Tweets. I want to figure out where I want to take this, right? And probably half of you've already clicked off by now, but this is just me monologuing. I want to do something like, if I find a scientific article that I want to discuss and it sounds interesting, I want to do something like that. I want to keep doing these, obviously. I want to kind of branch out and just see what I can do with this channel, because I really like talking in front of the camera. I just think I look like a weirdo sometimes, because I'm not used to seeing my face. I'm used to hearing my voice. Seeing myself is another thing entirely. But anyhow, I hope everyone enjoyed. If you enjoyed, leaving a like would be great. Criticisms are always welcome on these things because like I said, I'm just completely winging this, which is what most YouTubers do, I guess. That's what I did with my main channel, so it doesn't matter. Anyhow, hope everyone has a good day and don't party too hard. All right, y'all take care.